know how it is when you're an influencer. You've really got to hustle to get those views, likes, and subscribes. And now that you've joined a team of cryptid hunters, you're in charge of strategizing where and how to draw out those elusive mythical creatures and keep cranking out your sweet content without getting crop dusted by a skunk ape. Welcome to the Playdate podcast, bringing you stories from game designers, developers, and the team behind Playdate, the little yellow game console with a crank. I'm Krista Mergen. Today I'm talking with Chuck Jordan, whose game Sasquatchers mixes turn-based tactics with cryptid group photography. Big time spoiler alert this week. We talk about the overall gist of the game, and Chuck mentions some of the creatures that show up and a bit of the AI that drives them, as well as providing some in-game photography tips. We don't spoil everything, but definitely consider yourself warned. Okay, let's meet Chuck and hear a little bit about his background in games.
I'm Chuck Jordan. I'm the, designer and programmer and quote-unquote artist for Sasquatchers, along with Jared Emerson Johnson, who did the music and sound effects, and Guillaume Mercado, who helped out a lot with art cleanup. I started at LucasArts on a couple of the adventure games. The first one was Curse of Monkey Island, and then I worked on, the notable stuff is SimCity 4, and several projects with Disney Imagineering for interactive games inside the parks at Disney World, and Telltale Games. I was most heavily involved in Sam & Max and the Strong Bad school game for attractive people, and a little bit on the first season of Walking Dead.
Oh, okay, so just some of the most iconic adventure games of all time, a little game called SimCity, and Disney World. Sorry to gush, but that is a pretty stellar resume. Anyway, Sasquatchers is a great name. So what is this game all about?
I've been calling it tactical cryptozoology. It's a light turn-based strategy game where you're playing a group of cryptid hunters trying to maximize their views and likes on online media by getting the best pictures possible of the Bigfoots and other creatures that they find in the woods.
Awesome. And how did Chuck come to make a game for Playdate anyway?
It's all Jake Rodkin's fault. After I left Telltale, I was kind of feeling disconnected from the games industry and kind of burnt out on the whole thing. So he was in the middle of working on Firewatch at the time.
Yeah, Jake Rodkin is awesome. He's a writer, game designer, and podcaster who co-founded Campo Santo, makers of the adventure game Firewatch, which was published by Panic in 2016.
And so I just talked to him to see really just, what is going on in games these days, because I've kind of been in the Telltale bubble for years.
Telltale was an adventure games-focused game development company.
And so I talked to him and he gave me a rough idea, but then he said, yeah, Cable is working on this weird little game device that has a crank.
Cable Sasser is one of Panic's co-founders.
And I was like, okay, that sounds like it could be interesting. So at a Firewatch launch party, Jake introduced me to Cable. And I talked about the first pitch that I had, and then I've been working on it in all the years since.
Nice. Okay, so you're a team of cryptid hunters trying to gather photographic evidence to post to your various social media platforms. Where did that idea come from?
I guess I won't name them because it'd be rude, but there's a couple of reality shows where they have a team of ghost hunters, and they're just kind of comically inept and over exaggerating everything.
Got it. So why cryptids instead of ghosts?
I mean, it's kind of I've been a fan of them for some time. So it's kind of just background stuff that I know vaguely about. I'm not a true believer or anything, but I think it's just fascinating. And I've been watching a series on YouTube called Monstrum that is all about different cryptids. And it's a doctor who I think she studies folklore, and she does a lot of research about the different monsters. And I think part of it actually was the original Sam & Max, the Hit the Road game, when they had the Sasquatches.
Hit the Road was one of the awesome graphic adventure games in the Sam & Max series from LucasArts. It was released in 1993.
And it was around then that I heard about the skunk ape, which is just my favorite cryptid.
Watch out for the skunk ape.
And I've always loved the little strategy games I say little, but smaller platform strategy games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Advance Wars and Pokémon Snap. So it was just, how can I combine the two and make it silly?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Sasquatchers features a top-down map grid that definitely feels influenced by both Advance Wars, which is a turn-based strategy game for Game Boy Advance released in 2001, and Final Fantasy Tactics, a tactical role playing game released in 1997 that uses an isometric world map. But then a lot of the gameplay in Sasquatchers focuses on a first person photo mode where you use the crank to move the camera. And apart from the crank, it's really reminiscent of Pokémon Snap, a first person photography game from 1999, where the goal is to take high quality photos of Pokemon to accompany some scientific research. Both modes feel so natural and crucial to the game that I was surprised to learn that the first person photo mode wasn't part of Sasquatchers from the beginning.
There was kind of a late addition where like, the entire game started out as an overhead view because I didn't wanna, push my art skills too far past their breaking point, but it just kind of wasn't gelling into something, and I wasn't using the crank enough. So, I eventually, like, switched it to it can go into first person mode where you're kind of actually composing a shot, and then as part of that, like, you got to see more of the characters, so I figured, the most fun that I've had in games has been as a writer for the comedy games, so why not, inject a little bit of that into it and have their characters come through?
Yeah, I love the writing in this game. It's goofy and funny, and each character definitely has their own personality that's revealed through their pithy little exchanges. Even the tutorial just feels really natural because the core team members introduce themselves to you, and the flow of the dialogue is like a sitcom about cryptid influencers, which I think is totally a sitcom I would watch. So maybe a spin off idea there, Chuck. Anyway.
But yeah, the original version was just this top-down view because that was what I knew from the games that I had seen, and if they ever showed anything close up, it was kind of like just a brief cutaway. And so there was this idea of you had just the frame and you were trying to get as many of the tiles around you in shot as possible. So it was all kind of like wrangling the animals into place so that you could get a shot with as many things in it as possible. And then again, it was one of those cases where I'd been working on it for a long time and it was kind of like a nice diversion, but there wasn't any real soul to it. The only crank usage that I had in there, and some of that is still there, is that a lot of the other characters have these tools that incorporate the crank some way or another. But it was all top down. And again, I had these little characters I was trying to hint at, but it seemed like it'd be fun to show them. So yeah, I went in and the idea itself is very simple where it just figures out where they are on the grid and then treats that like circle around you. And then for the previous game that I did, I had the parallax. It was all scrolling. So I had a little bit of code that would do very, very simple, parallax scrolling of different things. So it's all completely faked because it is 2D assets.
Oh, yeah, parallax scrolling is a technique used in animation, web design, and video game graphics where background elements move more slowly than foreground elements. It helps create the illusion of depth.
So it was actually kind of just felt natural to combine those, but I think it was interesting in that it provided the hook of you having to do that mental calculation of going from the top-down grid to the first person and figuring out, "Oh, this is gonna be blocked by a tree, and this is gonna be hiding behind a rock, and if I wanna get him and this monster, I have to stand right here."
So here's where a kind of spoilery tip comes in. I was frustrated that I would use my turn to move my character into position to get that perfect shot, but then I kept getting dinged in the game for taking blurry photos of cryptids. So I asked what the trick was. Maybe laying Playdate absolutely flat to avoid any kind of movement at all? I assumed it had to have something to do with the accelerometer.
The trick is that you want to move the character after taking the shot. So it's not based on any of the device capabilities. It's just based on whether the character has moved to that turn or not.
Oh, man, I felt pretty dumb learning this, but maybe it'll help someone else too.
And it's like the host who does selfies is a little bit more tolerant because he's got a nicer cell phone than the photographer who's trying to take pictures in low light. So yeah, the idea there is that you can't just go up and like go right up to the monster and then take a picture. You have to kind of plan ahead and lure them into the range so that the photographer won't have to move before taking the picture.
Oh, this makes so much sense, and of course makes the map strategizing that much trickier, but it does solve the problem of blurry photos. So, pro tip. I mean, it was probably obvious to everyone else, but anyway, I just figured it was dependent on the accelerometer, and I was jostling the playdate around too much each time.
Because you've got a deliberately lo-fi screen and a device that is contemporary that has all these sensors and inputs and everything that it kind of implies it's doing more than it actually is when, oh, it could be taking advantage of the accelerometer. And just another spoilery thing, I did used to have a psychic character that I had to scope out, and so there would be ghosts and banshees in the level as well, and her interaction was instead of using the crank, it had a little planchette, like a Ouija board, and you had to, like, move it to communicate with.
What? That sounds awesome.
Yeah, there was originally a scientist and a psychic, and the scientist kinda got rolled into the audio engineer, like, all of his stuff, and then the psychic is for, I guess, DLC.
Ooh, downloadable content.
Everything you can unlock is kind of visible from the start, both with the team members and then the kind of like choose that Pokemon style cryptid display and the locations that you can unlock.
Yeah, the game is really user friendly in that way. There's a lot of hinting about what might be coming next without giving everything away. And there are a lot of clever tools to help you strategize, giving you ways to scout for and call the cryptids. And being able to pick up a different team member later in the game lets you unlock even more abilities. So there's always momentum driving you forward.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, that it's working because, yeah, that's been like the biggest thing that I've been trying to tackle with the game is that finding what that hook is, but also not letting my ambitions get out of control because this was like way out of scope for me when I first got the idea of including the first person mode. So I kept messing around with stuff and it would, I felt like I had a interesting dynamic where you were spending a lot of time searching for the cryptids and trying to get that last elusive one. And so I started putting in more stuff to help you find them. And then I made like to be honest, accidental change to the AI. So the monsters were like way too aggressive about approaching you because they do have some sophistication, which isn't always visible, but they try to stay like just on the outskirts of the light circle. So they try not to get too close to you, but they're curious and they try to get to the outskirts of this circle. And I made a mistake where they all just like were pursuing you. And that was too much, but it did make me realize that that was the right kind of pacing for it, where this kind of wants to be a just pick up and play. It's kind of an even different pacing than Advance Wars, where it's less of a I'm figuring out a strategy for this whole map, and it's more like I want to engage with something for 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can strategize very locally within the game on a mission by mission basis without necessarily planning out your next 10 moves and needing to remember all of that the next time you pick it up. And I also really like the sound design and music in the game. It's very atmospheric, and then also the sounds will sometimes play into the game's humor.
I worked with Jared at Telltale, and the thing about him is, on top of being just like really talented as a musician, like absurdly talented as a musician, he's also, sound design, but also he just gets it in a way that's tough to describe. Like when he would be doing voice direction for the games, I would be ready to explain a joke, and he's like, "No, it's like this, and this." And he's not laughing at him, but he gets it. So a lot of times I unfairly would like because my brain just works in pastiche, and so I would kind of unfairly say, I want something that's like the Space 1999 theme plus, psycho music or just like these oddball combinations. And he would deliver something that immediately referenced those, but wasn't just a copy like I would have expected. So I've learned over the years that with Jared, you say, here's the basic idea that I've got, and he makes something brilliant and then just delivers it to you fully. So for this, I knew that I wanted to be referencing all the old tactical strategy games that I really liked, and I wanted it to feel lo-fi. And so I sent him a video of the original XCOM introduction, and he just nailed the feel of it without making it a copy. And so I admit that I'll sometimes just leave it on the title screen because I like the music. So it calls back to the 80s if you remember or the early 90s if you remember the 90s, but if not, it just has like a peculiar vibe and it feels spooky. Which is one other thing that I really liked about it is it feels like it's trying to be edgy, which is one other thing that I wanted to get across for this game, that they were silly, but they thought they were cool.
I really like the little musical stings in the first person camera mode.
Yeah, those things, that was one of the pleasant surprises that he just delivered those, like if you need these little stingers for extra things, here they are. And I had no idea how to use them yet. But then when I put the camera mode in, it was just like, oh, this is perfect.
Nice. I also love the call that a character makes to summon the cryptids. It's really funny.
Y'all come quick.
That's an uncredited but very, very bad voice actor who's also a game developer and artist. This is like multiple times that I've tried to do a voice for the game, and then I hear it back, and it's like, oh, I should not be doing voice. But I figured something silly like that those would be all right.
Oh, I totally get that. I thought I'd get used to hearing my own voice after editing this podcast for a while, but turns out, nope. Still not my favorite. Anyway, I of course wanted to hear what developing for Playdate was like generally.
I keep saying that it reminds me very much of like early Macintosh back when I had my old Mac Plus, and that's obvious because you got a bunch of like hardline Mac devotees and Panic, and then also obviously the 1-bit display, and it just reminds me a lot of making little games in HyperCard.
HyperCard was an app and lightweight software development kit for Apple computers in the late 80s through the end of the 90s. It was geared toward non programmers and let you build and connect interactive software and games. It was kind of a precursor to the internet.
And specifically that at that time it felt like you could do anything. And then once they came out with the Color Mac, I was like, well, that's it for me because I have no I have no artistic sensibility.
That is obviously not true. The art in Sasquatchers is delightful. The map design is awesome. The characters have a fun cartoon style. It looks great.
So it's just kind of nice getting back to that and just proving to myself that I could, finish a game because I've been on these projects that, the teams kept getting bigger and bigger. And the closest experience to doing a game from start to finish was on those Strong Bad games. We did a little silly, like each episode had a little silly arcade game. And the designer of that episode was kind of responsible for doing it all themselves. And that was so much fun. So I kind of wanted that experience again. I mean, it's been really fun. I've worked with Lua a lot, like since Grim Fandango days.
Yes, he did just drop a reference to yet another classic LucasArts adventure game he worked on. No big deal. And Lua is one of the programming languages you can use to create Playdate games.
And I kind of have a ongoing love-hate relationship with it where it gives you so much rope to hang yourself with. So it's excellent for just like, oh, I have an idea for this. I want to try it out quickly. So for a lot of the things, it's like, oh, if I need to add a new skill for the character, like the actual process of it would be like a day, which seems like unheard of in other development environments, but it made it super easy to go quickly. And it's really nice to see, not all that surprising knowing Panic's attention to detail and stuff, but having been with the Playdate project for so long, seeing the SDK evolve and seeing them add more stuff and just make it more user friendly to the point of like opening it up wide is like, oh yeah, that'll totally work. Even though I've been working on it for so long, like so much of it came together just basically after my deadline where because of COVID and everything, where the deadlines kept getting extended, but everything kind of just seemed to coalesce. And there were all these happy accidents, like, adding the first person stuff gives you this, and this accidental AI tweak made it feel like this, and getting some feedback from some early play testers and just seeing that people got it. I think it's been a nice confluence of happy accidents. But yeah, it's so nice that it's filling me with such nostalgia for the Mac Plus days when I had HyperCard in front of me and it just felt like I could make anything. And, years of professional game development had kind of pounded that out of me. And then getting the Playdate again was just like, oh no, I can do this. This is really fun. I remember what this was like.
Awesome. So, will there be more Playdate games from Chuck in the future?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard like going into the developer forums and not being inspired, seeing all the stuff that people are making. And my hesitancy usually when I'm in an environment like that is knowing that I can't do the art myself. And so seeing the range of stuff and having it still be like lo-fi enough that I feel like, oh no, I can do this. I can totally make something like this. I'm just kind of inspired to do all this other stuff. And again, you have all these sensors and stuff, and my game, as long as I've been working on it, has not really taken huge advantage of all this stuff on there. And I've got all these, it seems like there's so much potential in that device. I've kind of got the bug now and I want to make another Playdate game, but I've got too many ideas for it.
Yeah, totally. A good problem to have, I guess. I'd love to see another game from Chuck.
I appreciate it.
For now, what are his hopes for Sasquatchers?
I'd say, yeah, I hope people have fun with it and they are encouraged to pick it up, try a mission, and then see how far they can get. And yeah, just enjoy how silly it is.
Yes. Well, I hope you have as much fun as I did playing my That's So Mothman adventure in Sasquatchers. Oh, did I mention you get to select a funny title at the beginning of the game? And I hope you get tons of views, likes, and subscribes for your awesome cryptid content. You can learn more about game designer and developer Chuck Jordan and music and sound composer Jared Emerson Johnson, as well as other topics we covered, via the links in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon to the Playdate podcast feed. The Playdate podcast was written, produced, and edited by me, Krista Mergen. Cable Sasser and Simon Panrucker composed the theme song. Additional music and sound effects are by Jared Emerson Johnson and come from Sasquatchers. There are also clips from Psycho, XCOM, and Space 1999. Huge thanks to Tim Coulter and Asher Cabrera for wrangling the podcast feed and working on the website, James Moore for building me an awesome PDA file audio extraction app, and Nevin Mergen, who created the podcast artwork and site design. And thanks as always to everyone at Panic. Playdate is shipping now and available for pre-order at play.date.
I was so delighted that you were saying that the character was coming through in the Sasquatchers games, because that's kind of the thing that I want to do, where it's like you get a feel for what's going on instead of you're being told what's going on.